Well, hello friends, and welcome to Sunday in the Backyard. Here we are, a week later, and we knew last Sunday when we did this live, I was head to toe covered with warm clothes. It was drizzling, and we knew it was coming. And even in last week's episode, I said, this is what it looks like now, and we're going to come back to it next week and see what it looks like, and I don't expect it to look good. And in all honesty, it's not hurting me. And I know that may seem odd, because I'm sure a lot of folks are just looking out going, everything I did, all the work, all the time, all the energy, is it even worth it? And I can tell you that all I can see is a potential, opportunity, regrowth, rebirth, spring. That's the inspiring part of me. Tomorrow will be another day. That's the put on your positive hat and find the opportunity in every crisis. But that is truly the way I live my life. And that's a lot of what I talk about when I do my intuitive gardening workshop series. Because that is a huge, huge part of it. When you are interacting with nature, you don't get to be in charge. You get to participate. And so what I wanted to do today was to talk about what is it that an intuitive gardener is doing right now to prepare themselves for the next phase of their garden. Okay? So the very first thing we're doing is that we are surveying our land without interacting. Meaning, don't run out and start trimming things up. Don't run out and try to start watering everything. I can tell you, I know why you think you need to water. First of all, everything looks really dry and brown right now, which means it looks to you like what we usually see in August, which means we're burning up. Plants are burning up and they need moisture, and we're trying to do everything we can to keep them alive. But that's not where we are in this situation, okay? Where we are in this situation is that our plants dropped into the teens 4 days ago, 5 days ago now. I may be a little off on that. I've lost track of this week. But we were in the teens for days. Okay.
Starting Sunday night.
There you go. Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday. Okay? And so, because of that, our plants have to adjust. And now we're back into the 70s again, which I said from the very beginning of this whole thing that there were certain things that we needed to pray for. Because regardless of the drop that was coming, it was how everything else around it happened, of how bad the situation would become. So, things we know and prepare for next time, and there will be a freeze next time. It might not be the 150-year freeze or whatever, but we will have freezes. It wasn't that many years ago, in January, we had a massive freeze. We were 90 degrees, and then the next day, we were in the 20s. And then the next day, we were back up in the 70s. Okay? So this type of stuff happens. But it's how we prepare in the long term to compete with it. Compete's not even the right word. I hate that word. To participate in it. There you go.
You said it
to be a part of the team. To participate in it. So we did everything we could to put as much moisture on our land prior to the freeze as we could. 2 reasons. 1, that helps to keep the temperature in your garden safer. Okay? 2, because it gets us to the point where when we get to the end of this thing, there's moisture in the ground, in addition to whatever fell down or came down during the time that we were working, that we were preparing for it. The second thing we did is that we did go out and harvest everything we could. And that's why the farmers right now actually do have harvest. So if you're still looking for fresh food, reach out to your local farmers. Grow Local South Texas did a list, I think it was yesterday, that gave you a list of all the people that are saying they have stuff available. I can tell you that just like I did, right before they went out and harvested everything they could harvest that they couldn't protect, okay? So that's part of it. Look for those guys if you're looking for things. The other thing that we did was that we then began paying attention to what was going to happen in terms of at the end of this deal. And at the end of this deal, how fast the temperatures rise is the plants will be affected. And I've been able to watch just over the last couple of days what I was trying to let people know ahead of time, which is don't do anything yet because you don't actually know what it's going to look like until we see what happens when the temperatures rise, okay? So now we begin to see really, truly what's happening. Like I came out yesterday and thought, well, the snapdragon was looking pretty good, and it may still if I go back and look deep inside there, but it really looks like it's kind of a sick plant, right? And here's the deal. You don't really want sick plants in your garden. You want the plants to go away, but you can't know for sure until we get through a couple of days of these temperatures, 60s, 70s, as we go up. I mean, it's supposed to get back in the 70s already today, and it's supposed to be in the 70s next week. Okay, so now what we're doing, especially when it comes to your really important plants, like your trees and your perennial ornamentals and things like that. And we're going to talk about that in just a second, but I just want to get a chance to look around. I'm not going to do any trimming on any of this stuff yet, okay? I'm going to wait probably till about tomorrow, because today the temperatures are supposed to get up into the 70s, and tomorrow they're definitely going to be getting into the 70s. And then I'm going to be able to go back in and have an idea after a few days of the change in temperatures, which plants are actually going to be able to sustain. So you can look at, like, I mean, you know, this broccoli here, while it doesn't look like it, you know, okay, maybe it could have lived, but it froze right here and broke right here. So these types of things are, you know, and you can feel a plant. Like here I am over here feeling this plant, and I can feel that its bark is melted. So eventually, when this plant starts to, you see that where it just kind of peels away? Eventually, this plant will either start to re-sprout, something green will start to come back out on it again, or it'll start to rot in a way that could potentially make other things around it sick. And so that's the kind of stuff you're looking for, because you don't want to leave it in there if it's going to cause other things to get sick. But at the same time, I've always told you over and over again to leave those roots so that they can break down inside of that stuff. So basically, you're just going to, and that's why I said the topic of today is surveying your land, because that's the most important thing that you can do right now over the next couple of days. I'm not even probably going to water anything out in this garden till maybe tomorrow. I'm just going to kind of keep an eye on the weather and the temperatures and see what happens.
You're relying on the soil, the moisture that's already in the soil, to continue providing nutrients to the plants that are even accepting those nutrients.
Agreed. And the thing about it is that I'm not trying to keep plants alive that are not healthy plants anyways. Okay? So the idea that, oh, that broccoli plant or that cauliflower plant may still be alive, it might be. I mean, you know, here's this, right? I suppose it's possible that this plant could still be alive and okay, but the thing about it is it's not healthy enough to be the type of production that you want anyways. So when we're talking about saving plants, that's part of the deal, is let's look at what happens and what plants are even worth saving anymore. Because here's the other thing, timing wise, this wasn't bad timing for what happened, because this is the point in the season when we start going back the other direction and cleaning our beds out and replanting for other things. Now, permaculture gardeners like myself and those of us that are gardening like that, we don't do as much cleanup, but we can. And we have. And so now we just go back in and fill those spaces back in. But if you give it some time, you will be able to see what's worth your saving. And the other thing is you will also be able to see for the next time, because I promise you, in today's era, there's always a next time, okay? So we've got to be prepared for the next time. But the next time you'll know, look, it's very likely that this young snapdragon plant that's not all fresh with flowers everywhere is going to live and be just fine. And what that tells me is that I have got to be sure to plant snapdragons in my gardens every year. Because in South Texas, snapdragons are a winner. They stick through the summer, they stick through weirdo freezes, they stick through all kinds of things. So they're a winning plant. We want to do everything we can, but you can't know that if you don't let the plants recover. This plant looks like it's recovering really nicely. My lettuces, interesting, right? Some of those things seem to have made it.
What is this, cilantro?
It's maybe
parsley?
I think it actually is celery. It might be celery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It might
So,
be
but when you
celery.
see
I'm not
it
100%.
nice and green today,
Yeah.
as opposed to, say, this, is this optimism now? Or is this going to melt? I know that you don't know every answer.
There is more optimism every single day that we see these continued uprise of temperatures, and we still continue to see a strong stalk and green leaves. That's the optimism when it comes to your annual vegetables and things like that. Don't mess with your onions, because it's very likely that your onions will be just fine.
That's this guy here?
Yeah, no, actually this is a leek. So grow leeks, because they don't mind the winter. Here, these. You see, I mean, that stalk's still pretty firm. This one, maybe. We'll see. The other thing that this does is it gives you the idea of, even when you're talking about cabbages, which types of cabbages, cauliflower, those types of things. Why do countries that have lots and lots of freezes all of the time always grow cabbage? Because they know that they're going to have food in the very worst cases when a particular variety of cabbage can hang in there. I mean, this little guy, this little gal, she's doing great. Okay? And you can just see, like, and some of the things that I like to look at here is the way that I talk a lot about this when I talk about permaculture gardening, the way that things grow in a bed that's built in a different manner. I mean, you can see the difference from one side of the bed to the other side of the bed. You can see the difference in places that are getting different wind pressure. You can see that plants, like when I get a chance to go out to the farm gardens this afternoon and look at, I've got 2 different gardens from different types of the farm, sides of the farm. And my understanding at this point is that the one side that I expected to be very windblown throughout the whole season, whether it was a freeze season or not, didn't hold up as well as the other garden that had a lot more warmth and had a lot more irrigation. So it has that water pressure on it, more moisture available to it more often. It's got more wind blocks. All of those types of things matter when you're talking about your garden. And when you look around down in little spots like this, where it was kind of covered up, This tomato plant, yeah, it died, but I left it there covering all of this. This is part of the reason why I constantly tell you leave materials on your plants in the wintertime, because the more life you have around, the more likely it is to live. Now, some of the things that I'm really wanting to keep an eye on is my eggplants, because I was really fast-forwarded on eggplants. I was doing really good with those. And this is a pretty young plant. And look how, hi, hello, we hear you. We see here that this plant looks pretty dire, but I have a good feeling about it, because down here on the bottom, it's still tough, and I can see that there's still a little bit of green. But I don't want to mess with it yet. I don't want to start chopping around on it. I want to give it a chance to let the roots, grab on and take a lot of times, and this is what I'll talk about when I talk about ornamentals and perennials. And that's the thing about eggplants, is that they tend to be a little bit of a perennial. And when you're talking about your trees and things like that, let's walk over there so I can talk about that, my fruit tree. Here, look at this before we get too far. This little nice, I think this is a storage cabbage. That one, who knows? we may end up with something there.
But hold on,
actually
fast forwarding to this cabbage, you learn that it is going to continue to grow.
Maybe. If I learn that it's going to continue to grow,
then you cut off this stuff, or just leave it all alone.
No, I'm gonna cut off a lot of that stuff to get it cleaned up. When I start the other thing is that if you here, Joe, look at me. Thank you. If you have to do a lot of cutting, then it's not time quite yet, because you need to let the plant do its own cleanup work. Okay, so as the leaves start to dry out, because right now, I mean, you can already tell if you look at something, like even here, like it's still moist inside here, but this is all dry and crusty. So once it starts to get all dry and crusty, then I know, like I could just go like that, and the whole plant just comes down on its own. Okay, so that's the kind of same thing that you're dealing with here. I don't want to start cutting around on it, because then I'm still opening the plant up to catching diseases and pathogens, and hopefully that freeze killed most of that stuff, for now anyways. But I don't want to create a situation where I, uncover things and cut things that are going to create more problems. So I'm just going to kind of let it be for a while. But certain beds, like if you've got a bed that's completely cleared out and you can tell that everything is dead in it, I mean, like you can look over in sections like this and know that this Texas salvia, right? So within the next couple of days, things that I know are dead, I'm going to go ahead and clean that stuff out, because I'm ready to start planting again. And that's the one thing I wanted to say before we go over and talk to the trees. We're going to go over and talk to the trees. Before I go over and look at the trees, is that it's time to start planting now. And last night I was kind of trying to make a decision about whether or not I was going to wait a little bit longer, because everything in me, I've told you guys this for weeks. I told you it last year, and that is about February 14th is when you start putting your spring garden plants into the garden. Well, February 14th this year, we definitely weren't putting stuff in the ground. In fact, we were losing stuff to freeze, right? Here we are. Okay, so hey, you are being a naughty dog. He's trying to eat a sad little sick bird this morning too. He thinks he's a farm dog critter. So there we are. I don't remember what I was talking about. I got distracted.
Let's go talk to the trees.
Let's go talk to the trees. Okay, so I mentioned to you that that you're kind of watching to see what of the things start to die off on their own. Okay, because the thing is that the roots are what you're concerned about. And I was talking about this with the eggplant when we got up to walk over there. You want to make sure that you keep the root of the plant alive. If the root of the plant alive, then the plant is likely to be just fine. As it begins to acclimate to the shift back to the normal temperatures, you're going to be able to see that the leaves are going to go to the brown. Let them fall off on their own. Don't do anything to that plant. Don't do anything to that plant. I can't tell you the number of times that somebody has told me their tree was dead and I walked over it and scraped the bark off of it and it's still green, okay? So don't assume your trees are dead. Do not assume your trees are dead. Give them a chance to actually re-sprout. That's the other thing. Now, this particular plant, I'm very happy about it. I'm talking everything.
Papaya even, or...
Papaya is a different kind of plant. Papaya is a tropical plant. If you've got... Let's walk over here. This was a casualty of not having preparation in South Texas for the temperatures that we dealt with, because this plant actually went inside the garage. I didn't just leave it out here, right?
Banana tree?
The banana tree. It's very likely that I probably lost this plant, because tropical plants like a papaya, I mean, it actually even feels different. When you asked me the question about the citrus tree, when I was about to touch that citrus tree, I would have told you that the citrus tree is firm in it, as opposed to the banana tree that's kind of squishy.
What about your pineapple right there while we're standing next to it?
I'm pretty sure I lost 3 years worth of growth, and I'm pretty sure that my pineapple season was almost coming. But that one, I mean, these are the types of things that you hope to never have to prepare for, because you don't have the facilities to prepare for it. And that was the situation that we dealt with, and kind of knew it when it was coming. I knew that there was only so much I could do, that I had not as much gardening as I had upgraded from one year to the next to begin doing, that I didn't have the space to handle the amount of plants that were going to freeze if a real freeze came. I just didn't expect it to happen. So, okay, so this is what I was talking about. Do you see? Y'all can almost even see how it's like.
Oh yeah, it's like a skin over a.
Right. That means that this plant, and it was literally sweating all the way down into here. So the likelihood of this plant being alive is pretty slim.
That's a
even if
plumeria.
even if the root is still alive, that plant is not in good condition anymore.
People love plumerias in South Texas. So, I mean, imagine across the whole city and area.
Yeah, it's probably very likely, if you didn't take your plumerias inside the house, that might have stayed at least 45 or 50 degrees while the freeze was, that you probably lost your plumerias. We're probably going to have, that part of it is going to be a massive loss. Like you mentioned, the papaya is most likely gone. But here's the thing about a lot of those tropical plants. A lot of those tropical plants grow really fast too. So it's not a loss like losing your oldest citrus trees and your oldest avocado trees and things like that. So my point about the trees is, don't give up on them yet, unless they're tropical trees. Because if they're tropical trees, the likelihood is very slim. And the thing about it is that what's frustrating for us here is that we are a subtropical climate. So to suggest that we can't and shouldn't be growing those things in our area isn't realistic, because the truth is we are in an area where those things should grow. Once in every 150 years, everything's going to break down, maybe, and we lose everything, and that just is what it is. I mentioned the ornamentals, like the Turk's cap. I am not at all concerned about this plant. It will be just fine. Don't start cutting on it yet. Just let it be. As a matter of fact, you might even let it be, if you can be patient with yourself, let it be long enough to where you start to see it starting to sprout its own green leaves again. Same thing with your trees. Let it start to sprout again before you start cutting up on it, okay? The moringa part of it as well, the moringa should be okay. If this part died, which of mine I don't believe that it did, because it doesn't feel like that plumeria, doesn't have that smushy feeling. But if yours does feel a bit like that, just leave it alone for now. And what you'll likely see underground, it'll start to sprout up from its roots from the bottom. And at that point, you just cut this out and it'll grow back up in its place. It'll grow more like a bush than a stalk, than a tree with a big nice stalk. But you will still have moringa. So don't worry too much about that. Unless it was an extremely young plant, moringa plant, or in a pot. If it's in a pot, it's probably dead. If it was outside, okay? But look, eggplants, things like this is what I was talking about. I'm pretty certain this eggplant's gonna be alive, okay? There's some melty parts here, and this is definitely dead, but it still has the little blooms on it down here that didn't freeze, okay? So let things keep settling. And then the other and someone had a question.
Well, two things. Sid says, if I have learned anything, it's to always have some babies and pots going, and worst case, I have something to share with people.
Yep.
And then Amy Snell Canterbury asks, and maybe you'll talk about this at the very end, when can we water again?
You can start watering your pots right now. And like Sandy said, and this is what I was going to say next, is plant ahead. Always plant ahead. I can tell you without any doubt, first of all, some of these plants in here, some of these big ones, I was actually selling them because I didn't need them. But now, thank God, I have them, okay? In addition to that, I expected the timing of the year that we were getting to that I was gonna probably, because I had so many of those planted already out at the farm, at the garden, everything, that I expected that I was probably gonna just they were just gonna be a waste. I was gonna have a bunch of plants that ended up dying as the summer heat came on, and it just be. But now I actually have a lot of plants. Now that's not a good indicator, because these are the ones that went into the garage, and the only thing that lived was the really hardy things like these little hollyhock flowers and parsley and some of that other stuff. But I lost all my head start on tomatoes. So you can see that. I mean, even to the point of, why the heck did I leave tomatoes on the plant? But it was because the freeze inside the house was an unexpected part of it, which is also an important part of why it's important to have seeds, like Sandy said, and be planting your own seeds, because yes, your growers, your farmers, like Elemental Farm, our friends over there in Sinton, they did a really good job of sustaining and maintaining their stuff. So they're going to have some stuff at the farmer's market where other folks don't have it. But when you're talking about nurseries and things like that, the nurseries had the same type of power failure all over Texas as we did. And they saw storms more north of us that were even heavier dutier than we are. So they're going to be limited in the amount of plants that they have to sell you. Okay? And even then, I don't expect them to price gouge, but if they've got the hold on the market and they've got all the plants, then they're going to be a little more expensive. They're going to be a higher commodity price, and that's just what it is. And I won't get into politics where I say you should pay for things because you want to get paid for things you do. And that's important. And yes, we take good kindness of each other. We protect each other. We have a community and a network where we share and trade and all of those types of things. But when you get into times where there's low commodities of things, things cost more. And that is just what it is. And those are things we prepare for. But part of the preparing for things is constantly planting all of the different types of things that you may or may not even use. So all of this stuff, okay, I'm going to probably start watering my garden this coming up week. I'm going to go ahead and water all of my pots now, today, and I'm going to go ahead and start planting again. What do you plant now? In the seed pots inside, inside protected stuff, tomatoes, eggplants, squash. I'm going to start putting out any of the broccoli, cauliflower that I already have started back into the garden. And I am going to start planting beans in the ground. I'm going to plant my potatoes in the ground. So this next week, I'm basically getting started as if it was a regular spring start. Yeah. If COVID didn't get you start planting food, and this freeze might tip people over to begin planting some food. I ask you this question almost every week. I am motivated today. What do I do to start from scratch today? Get some pots and start planting seeds in them. And this is the part where I tell you over and over and over again, the best thing you can do to be the best gardener you can be, aside from just being observant, watching, learning from other experienced gardeners, watching how other people do it. The second thing is plant plants, plant seeds. Plant them all the time. Plant them as often as you can. Plant them every single day that you can plant seeds and plants. Because the truth of the matter is you never know when you get an entire wipeout and then you got to go back in and replant and start all over again. And it could be a hurricane. It could be a flood. It could be straight line winds. It could be a freeze. It could be a massive early summer heat. It could be a late fall heat wave. In Texas, we grow resiliently. We can grow 11 months out of the year. We've got 2.5 months of freeze cold season and 3.5 months of the hottest season of the year. But we can grow all year round if we are actively planting plants on a regular basis. Actively planting plants on a regular basis. That's how you become the best gardener. That's it. That's really it. And watching and listening and learning and paying attention to what other people are doing and being willing to know, just like me, that I don't know everything. I'm going to learn something. As a matter of fact, And I mentioned Elemental Farms again, and I want to mention them again because one of the farmers that I named during this whole thing that I expected to come out on the good end of this whole deal, and I've only been watching them grow for about 5 years now, they're going to have a lot of stuff left. And that means that they've learned things and they've set into motion some things that they were taught when they started farming just a few years ago. And they've set them into motion quickly, and they've been learning fast. And so I'm actually even looking forward to trying to get out to their farm, taking my dad out to their farm so that we can look at some of the bigger, larger scale setups that they've done out there in order to keep some of this stuff from happening when it happens. And I want to say, it's not just the freeze. We all know that. It could be all kinds of different things, okay? So this is just one of the things. But the other thing I want to tell you, and this is where I started this whole video out today at the very beginning, talking about my optimism. And that is, to me, all I see is opportunity to grow now, to grow more, and to grow more gardeners, because more people have seen yet again that we have distribution issues, and that we have got to support farmers, because in between the small farmers are the ones that are going to be able to bail you out when you need fresh food. Okay, so don't just support them when you need them. Support them when they need you too. Okay, but we're optimistic because we can grow all kinds of cool stuff, and I'm very hopeful that we're not going to see the amount of pests, at least for the next year, that we saw this last year, because we haven't had a freeze in so long. I've told you that the freezes kill the pathogens, the freezes kill the insects, the pests, the problem bugs, the problem the problem critters that were around had to go somewhere else to find something to eat for a while. So they may have even run off for a while. Of course, they also might be in your house. You better check on that too. All right, you guys. I feel like at this point in life, all we can do is laugh and keep moving forward. And I'm so thankful to be here and to be able to have the chance to talk to you guys. And I wish you all the best of luck. And I'll see you next week when you get to see where I've come even 1 week later from the freeze. All right. Have a happy Sunday. I'm headed out to the farm to grow more food. Bye, guys.